Looking to buy, sell, or grow your business to position it for a sale? As the owner and managing partner of Sun Acquisitions, Dominic Rinaldi has personally been involved in over 300 M&A transactions. He has seen and done it all, consulting with large and small businesses across a broad range of industries. On M&A Unplugged, he'll interview buyers, sellers, and their advisors about their experiences scaling, selling, and acquiring businesses. On every episode, you will get key learnings, but most importantly, you will be better prepared for your own acquisition or sale. This is M&A Unplugged with your host, Dominic Rinaldi.
M&A Unplugged community, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you have heard me and our guest talk about how to maximize the value of a business. One of the surest ways to maximize value is to create a self-managing company. In fact, this is one of the reasons we are launching a new business this February, K2 Advisors, to help owners understand the value of a self-managed business. Creating a self-managing business takes time, a great strategy, and a willingness to hire great people and trust them to do the work. With no plans to retire or step aside, Ken Arlen, the founder of Arlen Music, has created such a company and is now enjoying all the benefits that go with a self-managing company. Ken has built a world-class entertainment business that has performed for the likes of U.S. presidents, dignitaries, and celebrities. His company specializes in providing live customized music for events around the country. Ken started as a saxophone soloist and orchestra leader, but realized he could build his business into something with more structure that wasn't reliant on him and his unique musical talents. Fast forward to today, and Ken has a business that is rewarding and works for him. What a great way to manage a business. And I'm excited for Ken to share his journey and his insights into how to build a self-managing business. Ken, welcome to M&A Unplugged.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
So Ken, if you could start with giving the M&A Unplugged community a quick backgrounder on yourself and how you got into this business, and then we'll peel back the onion and talk about, how you built such a magnificent business.
Happy to, and thanks for the great introduction. I think you said it better than I can. I've always been a musician. I graduated from college and went right into music, so I've never had what most people would call a real job. And it's always been my passion, and I felt confident that I could follow my passion and build it into a career. I started out as a woodwind player. And my background was classical clarinet, and then I switched over to jazz saxophone. Studied with a famous teacher named Joe Daly, who taught David Sanborn, Mike Brecker, a lot of great players, and evolved into just making a living performing and using my musical talent playing for other bands. And what's unique about the Chicago marketplace is that we have a great special event industry here. The music industry, if you live in LA or New York, there are a lot more offerings. New York has all the Broadway shows. They have all the national tours being booked. But here in Chicago, we've had two major aspects of the music industry. We've had the recording side, soundtracks for jingles and that type of thing, and the special event industry. And the commercial business and making soundtracks, jingles, really has dried up quite a bit, which kind of leaves special events. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I love it. It's something I've always been passionate about. So I evolved into that by playing in other bands and then eventually starting my own band. One of my first jobs in the 1980s was music director for Starline Corporation, which had a series of cruise boats at Navy Pier. We also had one in Milwaukee, one in Louisville, throughout the country, and they asked me to be their music director and put together music programs. And I've always loved the diversity. I've always loved the architecture of building on the business side and also balancing that out with the artistry of being a performer. So over the years, I've just been working at it and built the business into what it is today.
So Ken, I admittedly, I don't know a ton of musicians, but I know a few. And most musicians that I've come in contact with, carve out a nice living for themselves. They live a certain lifestyle. But you've built a real business with substance that doesn't rely on you When did you first realize that, you didn't just have to be a musician, you didn't have to just play gigs, you could build a real business and build potentially a self-managing business?
Yeah, it started out organically, very grassroots. I would be performing with other bands, and I'd always be thinking of how I would do things differently. And then eventually I just started experimenting with leadership and leading my own ensembles. And there's a really interesting book, I don't know if you've read it, by Benjamin Hardy, called Willpower Doesn't Work. And the whole premise of the book is it's not about willpower, it's about putting yourself in an environment where you either survive or you fail. And I've always been willing to take on those kinds of responsibilities. So I just thrust myself into the leadership role and built it from there. And a lot of people tell me it's unique to be able to balance the artistic side and the business side. And I've always enjoyed both of those. I don't feel like I have to compromise on the art side, but I've always had a passion for the architecture of building a business. And I think that put me on this path. And once you get on this path, there's an evolution that you're going to go through as an entrepreneur. And I think the self-managed company is just kind of the rainbow at the end of that evolution.
So Ken, did you have a model in your industry or maybe even another industry that you looked at and said, wow, that looks really cool. I'd love to have a business like that. Or did you come to it yourself?
That's a great question, Dom, and there really wasn't a model. Most of my predecessors were society band leaders in Chicago who maybe started a second ensemble, maybe had a small office to facilitate bookings at a hotel, but hadn't really built it out as a business model. So I feel that I've, in some sense, been an industry transformer in that regard, because the things that we've been able to accomplish really weren't done, at least in the Chicago market, before I did them.
You blazed a trail.
A little bit, yeah.
So let's start with, for folks who maybe are not completely familiar with the term, although I think it's pretty self-evident, let's describe for people, what does a self-managing business look like? And then let's go back to your journey, how you evolved over time and what you had to go through to get to where you are today.
Yeah, and there is a journey and it's a trajectory that I think all entrepreneurs go through. And I have to acknowledge the help I've gotten from being involved in Dan Sullivan's strategic coach program, because a lot of the things I can tell you right now to answer that question, Dan really laid out for people that were participating. And, Dan talks about entrepreneurs starting out as a rugged individualist. And everyone starts that way. You have a vision, you have a passion. For me, it was music, and I did everything. I mean, I remember being the guy that booked the job, wrote the contract, loaded the equipment into the back of a van, set it up. I did everything myself.
This is like most entrepreneurs, right? Most people who start a business or even maybe some that even buy a smaller business wind up doing exactly what you're just describing.
I don't know anyone who didn't start that way. You start with a vision and a passion, and out of necessity, you do everything yourself. The next evolution is you learn to delegate. And I didn't start out as a great delegator, but I certainly have evolved into one, and it's essential in this process. And when you delegate, you start building a team, and you have to make good choices about the positions that you fill. And once you have your team in place, or as you're developing your team, it's really important that you allow people to work within their area of uniqueness. And Dan talks about unique ability a lot. And basically, what unique ability is that special juice that you have that really sends chills up and down your spine, something that you really feel that you were born to do. And you have to be able to separate it from areas of mere competence, certainly incompetence, but even excellence. And when you hire people, you have to be able to position them to take on tasks that will complement your own weaknesses in the areas that you want to delegate. And so if you can do that, and I think it's essential in the growth of any business, then you will start transforming your industry by developing innovative products and innovative processes that really distinguish yourself in the marketplace.
Yeah, so where I'd really like to start is if you could describe for people what a self-managed company looks like for you. So how do you operate your business today that makes it self-managing?
Well, you have to have great people in place. And I've certainly learned from a lot of people that are wiser than myself. There's a great book that Gino Wickman wrote called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And he wrote a book with Mark Winters called Rocket Fuel. And the premise of that book is that most teams need two key people. You need a visionary and you need an integrator. And usually the entrepreneur, and in this case it's true for me, is the visionary. You come up with the creative ideas. But most visionaries are not the best people for either integrating or managing their process. So for me, it was finding that key person, and I'm very fortunate that I did. Tim Clark has been with me for 15 years, and he definitely fills that role of integrator. And there's obviously other positions that you have to fill, but you need a key person. And it's interesting because, I had the opportunity to participate in Peter Diamandis' Abundance 360. And he had some people from Google that came, a guy named Jake Knapp that wrote a book called Sprint. And basically it's how Google teams solve problems. And we all know how impactful that company is. And their whole theory is that a team shouldn't be so large you can't feed it with one large pizza. So small, stealthy teams of 4 or 5 people can really accomplish a lot. So in my company, that's about how big we are. We have about 4 full-time office staff. All of our band leaders, of course, add to the list, and we have over 75 musicians that are exclusive with the company. But the key management team is about 4 people. And you have to be able to create a vision that everybody buys into and lay out clear goals, and then have management and the right people in place to implement it. And when you do have the right people in place, it really doesn't require as much oversight and management as you would think, because everyone clearly understands what they have to do and they work towards that goal.
So Ken, let me ask you this. How do you enjoy the benefits of having a self-managed company? Because and the reason I ask this is I talk about self-managing companies a lot with our clients. I tell them that to the extent that they can remove themselves from all of the day in, day out decisions that get made, other than the real strategic ones, and removing themselves from functional areas, that they'll create more value for themselves and for their business. But what are the benefits that you've realized as a result of a self-managed company?
Balance and preservation of energy. I'm definitely functioning in a burnout industry. And you could say that about most businesses. When I look at people that are talking about selling their business or retiring, it's usually because they've become tired or lost their love or enthusiasm for the business. And I think it really comes down to managing your time, because if you have your health and you have great relationships and you have balance in your life and you love what you do, then why would you ever want to consider retiring or selling your business? But most entrepreneurs, they don't do a great job of managing their own energy. The benefit of the self-managed company is I can bring balance back into my life. Last year, I took 160 free days.
Describe what a free day is, because that's a Dan Sullivan term, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's 24 hours where you're not working, and that means not a text, not an email.
It doesn't mean you didn't go into the office. It means you didn't touch work for 24 hours.
Well, I would say it means you didn't go into the office, because it's almost impossible to go into the office and not touch work. But what's interesting about it is we're growing as a company. We're achieving more. We're having bigger sales results and accomplishing more and doing more performances. We'll do close to 500 events this year. And I'm taking all this free time. And when I come back to the office, a lot of times the company says, we got more done when you were gone. And the reason for that is, it's true. I mean, when you're the visionary and you're the idea person, you walk in with a lot of ideas. And then your staff has to respond to all of those ideas and figure out how to follow through on them. And it becomes a distraction. So the biggest benefit for me is, taking this free time at a point in my career where my kids are out of college. My wife and I want to enjoy the fruits of, many years of hard labor and hard work. And my wife was very supportive of me in building this business and very involved on the creative level, doing a lot of things for the company. So I love my life. It's a great life. I still do what I love. I love my business, but I do it with balance. And that requires the self-managed piece. Honestly, Dom, if I were to call up the office tomorrow and say, I'm taking the rest of the year off, the company would function just fine. There'd be about 30 clients that I've committed to leading their performances that, would be disappointed. But we have a co-leader in place that they would ultimately be very happy with. I mean, everybody at some level is replaceable, but you don't divorce yourself from the vision and the enthusiasm, but you free yourself up from the day-to-day activities
to do the things you really love. And then I want to go to your journey, but I want to go back to, because I did a quick calculation here for the M&A Unplugged community. Ken has about 43% of the year as free days. If you calculate out how many days he's taken as free days, can you imagine doing that in your business? 43% of the time not touching your work in any way, shape, or form. That's amazing, Ken. I mean, congratulations. That's outstanding.
But it does require you, when you are working on it, to be super focused and really have what Cameron Herold calls a vivid vision. Cameron wrote a book called Vivid Vision. And, what he recommends the entrepreneur to do is lock yourself off in a remote cabin somewhere and sit down and really think about your business and write out what your vision is, because everything really relies on the entrepreneur laying out, what is the vision? Why are we doing this? What are we going to do? What are the goals? Setting clear goals, and then you can accomplish them. I think if you're an owner of a business, if you're an entrepreneur, you are in a unique position to put your hands on all the levers and all the dials and build that business to serve your lifestyle. And it's much harder done and easier to say. But if you can do it, it's a great goal to shoot for. And, again, in my business, it's a requirement. Most musicians burn out. And I saw that all around me.
Ken, I've been representing clients for a long time now, and I see burnout in every industry, and even people who are young, but they've been working at their business and in their business for 20 years or 25 years, and they're completely burnt out because they didn't learn how to create a self-managing business and give themselves that balance. And so even though they're young, they're done, and you can see it in their faces. And quite frankly, we bring them to market, and the buyers, once they meet them, look at them and say, "Wow, you're so young. Do you really want to sell this? Like, is there something I'm missing here? Is there something in the business that I'm not aware of that's in the closet that's going to come out after you walk away?" And the reality is, no, they're just burnt out. I was at a conference last year, and the conference leader had done a study of business owners and found that, it was a small study, but found that 75% of business owners were remorseful after selling their business. And not because of how much they got paid for the business. It was because they didn't have the next thing to go do in their life. So that tells you a couple of things. One, they hadn't created balance while they were running their businesses, and they sold it and they had nothing to go do. They had no hobbies, they had no interests, they were kind of lost. And so self-managed business allows you to do that and hold your business.
And I think it's important to learn how to take some of the equity out of your business throughout the process, because a lot of guys build up all their equity inside the business and then they have to sell,
Yeah.
And in my case, I'm a terrible golfer. I have some hobbies that I really enjoy. And because I've had a lot of free time, I know what it's like to spend a couple weeks basking in those hobbies. And ultimately, I get restless and I come back to my participation in music. I've oftentimes thought, well, if I fully retired, what would I do with my time? And the first thing I think of is, well, I'd play music. And then I go,
You're doing that now.
Wait a second. What's wrong with this picture? I'm doing that now. And I've always wanted to, write more music and record more. And those are goals of mine for this year. But, sometimes you have to kick yourself in the butt, to refine the level at which you're, using your work time.
Absolutely. So, Ken, I want to get a little bit to the journey. I mean, maybe we can keep this at a high level because you don't create a self-managed business overnight. And I'm sure there are lots of peaks and valleys and plateaus that you have to break through.
Absolutely.
But maybe you could talk a little bit about your journey. I mean, you talked about how you started and how you first envisioned building a self-managing business and finding the right person. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what were the major steps in getting there? What were some of the plateaus you hit that you had to break through to ultimately get to where you are now?
Sure. Every step of the way, as I've grown and as my business has grown, you reach a plateau, a certain level. And usually that's defined by an income level, where you just can't take on any more transactions. You can't do any more work or bring in any more business because you're maxed out. And usually, Dan Sullivan in his program calls that the ceiling of complexity. You grow up to a point and then you hit a ceiling. And in order to break through that ceiling, usually it involves more delegation. It usually involves taking on more staff and letting go of more things. So for me, I really enjoy the sales process. And that was a really hard thing to delegate. But in the process of growing your business and going on this journey, you have to make some tough delegations. And I think that's what holds most entrepreneurs back because they feel that no one can do this as well as I can. And the truth is, at first, no one can. But if you give someone the opportunity to learn from their experiences and do the job and grow, eventually they can potentially surpass you. And so I think that's the key ingredient in becoming a good delegator and going on this journey.
So how did you get over that hump? How did you ultimately, let go of sales, and how did you find the right person that, you could trust?
Yeah. So first it came with identifying the need. And that resonates with deciding what is the best way for me to spend my time. And I realized that the way I wanted to spend my time was performing, playing music, and working with clients and totally on the creative side. And there is a lot of creativity to selling, but I realized that something had to be delegated in order for me to grow and go to the next level. So I delegated selling. And over time, the sales department is far out producing what I would be capable of doing. And that frees me up to work on growing the business and traveling, meeting with people, opening up new opportunities, opening up new markets. As I think back, the initial question was about the journey, to get towards a self-managed company. You grow, you hit a plateau, you peel something off to free yourself up to think bigger. You grow, you hit another plateau, you peel something else off so you can think bigger. You grow, and it's just, if you look at the chart, it's just a line going up, plateaus, goes up, plateaus, and that's a trajectory. And that's totally been true in my business.
So it's learning to let go of pieces that aren't your unique ability and delegating those to the right people, and then trusting that you've got the right people to go do that.
Absolutely. And when you get to the most refined level of this, moving towards self-managed company, you're going to delegate things that you are unique at. And that is very, very difficult for most entrepreneurs to do. So you have to recognize that it's an essential part of the growth curve. And, it does work. And the interesting thing is that the more control I relinquish, the more I feel empowered to be in control. So the journey's been all about, for me, this trajectory. And we have a great team in place right now, and we can pretty much accomplish whatever we put our mind to. But there's always that next position that you can fill. So there definitely, for our company, is a position that I think we'll probably fill in the next year. And when we do fill that position, there's going to be more growth as a result of it.
So do you see another plateau coming somewhere down the road, or do you think you now have this business at a point where it truly is self-managing for the long run, as based on your goals and your vision?
You can't get complacent.
Mm,
I think that's a danger.
good point.
And so I may not need to grow the business for my own satisfaction, but I want to grow the business for the happiness and future fulfillment of all my employees. And, the reality is every business eventually is going to make some kind of transition over time. I mean, I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 90 years old, probably. So it's great. Your K2 Advisors program that you're putting forward, I think is going to be of incredible value. Because even if someone like me comes in and says, I have no intention of transitioning, I have no intention of selling, I love what I do, I have a self-managed company and I have balance. The reality is that life events can happen. I mean, something can happen with your health or your sense of well-being, 5-10 years down the road. So you have to always be perpetually prepared for that.
Absolutely. There's a date on the calendar for everybody, and it's either a date of your choosing or not of your choosing. So people will exit their business. The question is, are they going to exit it on their terms and getting maximum value? And if you run a self-managed business, most likely you're ready at any moment for that exit. And, running my M&A practice, Sun Acquisitions, for as long as I have, I've met with thousands and thousands of business owners. Most are not ready to sell today, but I'd also tell you most also are not operating their businesses at maximum value, which is the reason why we're starting K2 Advisor. Help those owners who want to maximize their value do that, run a self-managed business, and so they're ready whenever they decide they're ready.
I would venture to say that the best way to test your company and the culture within your company to find out if it holds water is to take a month off and leave. And then when you come back, you're going to know who can step up, what the company is able to accomplish while you're gone, what holes need to be filled, where the break in the dam is. And it's a very scary proposition.
Yeah, I would think your comment there would scare most business owners that I come across. The thought of taking a month away from the business without, really being involved in the business at all, I think would be very scary for most people. So I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you think owners can't let go of their pieces of the business to create a self-managing company? Because I think this is probably self-evident to most people, but many people just have a hard time letting go.
I think it goes back to the beginning of the entrepreneurial process when you start out as a rugged individualist. You had this vision and you were a solo practitioner and you did everything. And it develops a mindset. And, even though it's been over 30 years since I was, that guy, or about 30 years, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. And I think it still programs a lot of my subconscious thinking. And I talked to someone the other day that was considering strategic coach program, and she has a highly successful special event industry and does some very high level work. And I started to talk about balance and free time. And she goes, yeah, don't try that one on me. It's not going to work because my kids are growing up. And honestly, I love my business and all I want to do is work in my business. I said, oh, okay, great. Then what do you think does need improvement or work? And she said, well, I haven't really figured out how to multiply my business, where the multiplier is. And I said, so you're basically in the time and effort world, which means you only get compensated if you personally are putting in the time. And she said, yes. I said, well, there you go. That's the next step for you because that comes along with all of this. My company will do close to 500 events this year, and we did last year. I personally performed, I think, at 35 of those. So that means the rest of them, I wasn't involved. I didn't sell it. I didn't get in my car and drive to the venue and perform. And I probably don't know too much about what actually happened, but it was my vision, my process, my reputation that was leveraged to get the client. I've certainly trained, and worked very closely with all of the, band leaders and people that represent our company. And, we own all of our own products. We're not a booking agency. So we create these products and then we own and manage them in the marketplace. So that's the multiplier.
Yeah. That sums it up right there. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, number one, the number of events that you're doing a year, and then how few you're actually involved in any way, shape, or form.
And people will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh my God, you guys were incredible. Like you played my daughter's wedding, or you did this incredible fundraiser and you were fantastic." And they're talking to me as if I was personally there. And,
Yeah.
and half the time I have no idea. I'll go back to my office and go, what did we do on February 14th? And they'll go, "Oh yeah, that was Boys Hope, Girls Hope, fundraiser, whatever." And I just smile and say, "Thank you very much." And it's my name is on the company. It's my reputation, and this happens over time. It doesn't happen overnight, but eventually you build a brand. And someone told me something really wise once. A lot of people think they need to go out and define a brand and build a brand, but you don't get to say what your brand is. The market says it for you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they react to the product that you put out there. So if you put out a good quality product, the market's going to define it.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it's what people say about you and what your reputation is in the marketplace that defines your brand. My dad was very successful in business and he taught me early on. I just remember him saying this to me like it was yesterday, and I was probably in high school. He said, "The best investment you can make is the investment that you make in yourself."
Yeah, that's wise advice.
So at a time when I was building my business and we were talking about the journey and the trajectory, one thing I kind of glossed over is for the first 10, 15 years, there were people working for me that were making more money than I was making. But I was always willing to invest back in the business to have people to help me realize a future vision.
Right. So this is an important concept, Ken. You had to give up some of your income, your distributions in order to get here. But in doing that, you've leapfrogged all those other people who were making more money than you, earlier in your career by, 10, 20, 50 fold, right?
It's really true. And my dad also taught me you can build a business and if you need to retire, you can retire off of 5 good years. And it can be a 30-year business. So it takes a certain kind of person to be an entrepreneur. I don't know what the percentages are. Don, maybe you've studied this, but the percentages of people that go into business that are entrepreneurs, that are willing to take on all the risk, take on all the responsibility. It's a special kind of person. You have to be wired a special way. The problem is that you need to understand this journey and you need to understand what the payback can be in order to continually have the confidence to reinvest and grow. And for me, it might have been just ignorance because I was just so blindly passionate about music that I never really considered any other business path or any other option. So it was like, I better make it in business because I have nothing else to fall back on.
Well, you were passionate about it. And, I do talk to people who say to me, "I don't know that I can build a self-managed business. What I do is so special. My ability to sell to my clients is so special. I don't know that I can really hire the right people to do it." What I say to people in that case is everybody can do it. You just have to want to. And I think your business is, just such a great example of that. I mean, I think your business is a hard business. There's lots of competition, but you built something very unique in a sea of performers. And, there are lots of options out there, but your business is so unique compared to all of those other options. And I think, a lot of people looking at your business would think, well, I don't know how you build a self-managing business, in that industry. And here you are and you did it.
Dom, I still have people that come up to me all the time. And when I tell them what I do, they go, "So what do you do to make a living?" No, I'm serious. People come up and say, "So you play music, but what do you do to make a living?" I get that all the time. And I am passionate about mentoring young artists that want to have careers in it, not just music, but any of the arts, because I think I have a good sense of what the mindsets that you have to have in order to be successful. And the very first mindset is you have to accept that you are an entrepreneur if you want to succeed in the arts. You're an entrepreneur and your product is your talent that you're bringing out in the marketplace, and all the laws of commerce apply to you. And being in strategic coach program and sitting next to really successful entrepreneurs in hundreds of different industries, what I've discovered is that the incredible similarities. People think I'm incredibly unique because I'm in music, but I'm dealing with all the same issues, all the same problems, the same trajectory of evolution, the same plateaus, the same need to delegate, the same issues that all other businesses work with.
Yeah, these issues transcend industries, right? Every business has the same issues. It's just a matter of whether or not you're willing to do what it takes to create a self-managing business. And look, some people might not want to, right? They just might want to be the person that is involved in all of the functions. Just have to understand that the risk of burnout is high and the value of your business is going to be lower because it creates more risk for somebody else to come in and take over. Ken, we're going to get ready to wrap up here, but I do have one, big question that I want to ask you that I think a lot of people might be thinking about. So you mentioned 160 days of free time. You're not in those days, you're not touching your business in any way, shape, or form. I think that might scare a lot of people. How did you deal with a free day at first? If you had gone from doing everything and then slowly starting to delegate, I'm sure free days must have scared you. How did you figure out how to fill up that time, I should say, and be comfortable not touching the business?
Well, at first it was looking at my days. In the coach program, they have a time system where you divide your time into focus days, free days, and buffer days. And focus days are where you make your money. For me, it's performing, it's meeting with clients. Buffer days are when you do the stuff of life, filling out of forms, balancing your checkbook, or, whatever stuff you have to do to prepare for the focus days. And it was just rearranging my way I thought about time. And most people go into work every day and they may not really feel like going into work. So they decide, I'm going to go to work. I'll work for a couple hours. I'll take a long lunch. I'll go back in, work another hour, and then leave early and, go to a Bulls game, whatever. In their mind, they put in 3 hours of work, but it was a work day. They went into work. So when you take the free day, it puts extra pressure on the focus and the buffer days. So the first thing I started doing is saying, okay, I'm going to cram a week's worth of work into 3 days. And it's not hard to do, once you develop that mindset. So yes, it's a little disconcerting. It takes a little work to get there, but the reward is, fantastic because everybody wants their free time. In my case, it was essential because I knew I was in a burnout industry. And there was a point, maybe 10, 15 years ago where I just was really, really getting burnt out. I was performing at over 100 events a year. I was doing a lot of the sales. I was carrying a lot of, juggling a lot of the balls for the company. And I just knew that I couldn't continue on that trajectory. So free time brings rejuvenation. And with rejuvenation brings better vision, better, strategic thinking. It all comes down to just using your time more efficiently. And I just came back from pretty much being gone for 2 weeks in a row. And we had a big New Year's Eve performance at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. And then my family went to Mexico for a week. And then I came back and did one job on January 11th and then left again for Scottsdale because I'm into cars and they have the big car week in Scottsdale. So I was virtually gone for 2 weeks. When I came back, my office presented me with a report. And the report was everything that got accomplished over those 2 weeks while I was gone. We had the most successful January in terms of sales, almost doubling our average January sales in history. So I knew they were obviously very busy, but there were a lot of other things that got done. And a lot of those things were goals that I had indicated to the company when we sit down and talk about, what our goals are for the next 90 days. So it's an incredible feeling of satisfaction to come back and say, all this got accomplished and I was gone. And then you're ready to jump back in and, pick up where you left off. And, it doesn't always work. All this relies on having people that can step up and carry responsibility. And, in any organization, there can be letdowns in that arena. And sometimes when you hit some rocky roads, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat this and make it sound like it's all Cinderella story, but the reality is that, this has been my lifestyle for the last few years.
Yeah, that's just tremendous. Ken, I really appreciate you carving out some time to talk to me and share this information with the M&A Unplugged community. It's so important for me to have people like you on the podcast to really demonstrate that, achieving a self-managing company is possible. It takes time and effort and the willingness to let go and find the right people, but it's possible. And then the potential to have a balanced and rewarding lifestyle like you've carved out for yourself is there, while you have a business that's growing and creating opportunities for your people. Just outstanding. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Dom. I really appreciate it. It's great to share with you today.
Absolutely. So M&A Unplugged community, let me just recap a few things that Ken touched on that I think if you're interested in building a self-managing company really matter. First is you have to get really crystal clear on your vision and your goals for the company. What is it that you envision? How do you want the business to operate? Then you have to be really clear about what your unique abilities are. And unique ability is a term that is coined by Dan Sullivan. Boy, we've given him a lot of credit today, and rightfully so. But unique ability is not just the things that you're good at. It's the things that you're good at and the things that you love to do. Because there are lots of things that we're good at that potentially drain us of our energy. And we need to learn to let go of those things as business owners, but focus on the things that we're good at and we're passionate about, we love to do. When you find that, stick to those things and delegate everything else. And the delegation may take some time and it may be a lot of starts and stops, but eventually you'll figure it out if this is really your goal to build a self-managing company. Then in building that right team and developing them and trusting them to go do the right things. And if you can create that, you're probably going to carve out a really nice business for yourself with a lot of balance. And as I mentioned earlier in today's show, we are forming a new company called K2 Advisor, which will hopefully be launched in February. And this is one of the things that we're going to work with owners on, is how to create a self-managing company, how to create more value in your company. And if you're looking to acquire a business and want to start out on this path from day one, we'll work with you as well to figure out what's the right path for you to create a business that has maximum value. All of today's information will be available in the show notes. If you would like to learn more about the process of acquiring, scaling, or selling a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com, or feel free to reach out to me at drinaldi@sunacquisitions.com. I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the M&A Unplugged podcast. And until then, please remember that scaling, acquiring, or selling a business takes time, preparation, and the proper knowledge.
Thank you for joining us today on M&A Unplugged. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and recommend it wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more great information on how to scale, acquire, or sell a business, please visit our website at sunacquisitions.com.